Hi, welcome to Dyspraxic Rosie Writes, a channel where we talk about dyspraxia, chronic illness, and the writing life. Today we're going to talk about the sunflower lanyard, which is a subtle tool used to signify that a person has a hidden or invisible disability and may need a bit of extra support, time, or understanding to get through a specific public space or a specific business or an airport or something like that. And that is exactly the symbol that I have around my neck right now in order to start to familiarize you with exactly what this symbol is all about. In terms of what hidden and invisible disabilities are, I think we have to clarify that just a little bit because I feel like there's a lot of confusion in this area. That can look like everything from diabetes to neurological conditions to autoimmune conditions to anything where it's not immediately apparent or visible to the untrained eye, but it is very much there and real and apparent. I first found out about the Sunflower Lanyard program through my connections within the UK. This program originally started at Gatwick Airport in 2016, and I was immensely impressed by what it was doing in order to make sure that people with invisible disabilities, just as much as people who needed extra support to get through settings like Gatwick, how much it gave them a voice and a tool and a system to be able to legitimize what forms of support they would need to thrive in that environment. Editor Rosie here. I just want to add in a point of clarification, just to clarify exactly what I mean by this. I am somewhat frustrated sometimes in airport settings about how a lot of the emphasis, as important as it is, goes exclusively on people in wheelchairs and mobility devices, and not so much on invisible and hidden conditions. And I really do hope for a public transport and travel future where the emphasis of the training goes on just as many invisible hidden conditions as mobility devices, wheelchairs, etc. As a Canadian, the program had not yet arrived yet in Canada. So I had to wait a really, really long time after the program had launched in order to start to see it in anywhere that's not the UK. And initially, at first, I assumed that it was something that you had to go and get doctor's permissions for. You had to go and get medical proof. You needed all these notes. But actually, that's the most common misconception of all. No, you do not. And that is the best part. What I know from being a person with a hidden condition is that it can sometimes be immensely difficult to go through all those bureaucratic hoops and to prove to all the right professionals and get all the right appointments in order to get that check mark, in order to say that, yes, this is a real thing. So that way, if you know you have an invisible disability, like I do, like dyspraxia or autism or something like that, then you can simply go and pick up a lanyard at somewhere like an airport or a participating business. And you can then have that tool, that system of saying that, yes, you don't look disabled, whatever that means, but you might still have some legitimate things that you might need done differently in order to get something valuable out of the lanyard as a system. And I have had a lanyard for, I think it's been around like 2 or 3 years now. And I found it really, really helpful to be able to not get lost in the crowd. My one biggest fear when I go through really busy, crowded settings like airports is that I'll get forgotten about or simply be accused of not listening to instructions or not understanding instructions and dealing with a whole lot of other people's impatience, because I have a really, really hard time with verbal instructions, especially around movement. And that can be really difficult. And in settings like airports, I get really easily overwhelmed. So under pressure, what may look on the surface as, oh, she's got something to hide, is not actually she's got something to hide. It's, oh, I'm really overwhelmed, so I'm not quite remembering that I'm here for 2 days, not 3. And maybe I just need an extra few minutes and just a little bit of patience to get those words out to an actual person. And that's the very real reason why for a long time settings like airports or getting on a train really felt really, really hard for me to feel like I could have enough independence, to feel like I wouldn't end up in the wrong city if I got on a train, or I wouldn't have to then like buy a new ticket because I misjudged that I need 15 minutes, not 5 to get to that gate. And it's been great in that regard because it gives me a legitimate form of language and a tool that I can use to then point to. And the best part is I don't actually have to disclose. The thing is, a lot of the settings I'm often in, they often don't know what dyspraxia is. And in a way, that's fine because I can just apply this to what I need help with in the moment. It's given me like a ton more confidence to then go up to a security guard, for example. And if I'm having trouble putting my computer in a backpack because I'm feeling very overwhelmed and under pressure, and like I'm in a hurry and like it's something I can't do quick enough for everybody else's expectations and speed, I can just go up to a participating airport or business or whatever, and I can just say, could you help me with this? Look, I have issues with this sort of thing. And without hesitation, someone will just say, oh yeah, okay, I had this training, so I get it. I get that that's something that you personally might need help with. There are some genuinely really, really, really good and kind and wonderful people working in assistance. But I also wanted to emphasize too, because I feel like my comment section will be a reflection of this, and that is that not all are created equal in their treatment of disabled people who work in assistance, and sometimes there is a degree of just general like laziness in doing the bare minimum that frankly is kind of frustrating. And what I'm explicitly referring to here is the very real need to prepare for the fact that either scenario could honestly happen. But I also want to give a special shout out to some of the genuinely kindest people I have dealt with in assistance scenarios. Like, for example, the wonderful woman in Pearson Airport, unfortunately I don't remember her name, who offered to escort me to where I needed to go because I was feeling a bit overwhelmed and I was struggling to understand her instructions. So in the moment, I suggested, oh, can I just like follow you to where you're referring to? And she just kind of went, oh yeah, I'm going there anyways. And so I did. And she even put up with my sort of awkward banter and attempts at small talk, and just kind of rolled with it. And I really appreciate that. And I want to see a future where behavior like that is much more normal. And I want to normalize that and make sure that that is as widespread as possible. For me personally, as a dyspraxic individual, most of what I've used the lanyard for has been to feel comfortable and confident in settings like airports and trains, as I mentioned earlier. Although the thing is, I do navigate just as many spaces that are not yet participants in this program, that it's not always a tool that is available to me. And that is very much the thing that I feel we always have to talk about in terms of the downsides of this program. Yet, the one thing we can do as people with hidden conditions who do have the lanyard is we can start to push this as a system within our communities, within the ways we get to work, the ways we get to school, the ways we get to our holidays. And we can start to really speak up much in the same way I am right here. And we can start to encourage our workplaces as well to start to use this as a system. I have really personally loved the expansion into other countries, and it gives me a lot of hope because for so long I felt very misunderstood and often like there was an element of risk to navigating very like loud, crowded, busy public spaces. And it's been nice having this as a system because if I don't understand the instructions, I can just say, oh, look, I need a bit of extra support. But there's only really one catch to that. And that's that we have to acknowledge, too, that the lanyard is a system that is new, especially outside of the UK. But in the UK and globally, it is a system that unfortunately means that people are only getting trained on invisible/hidden conditions in general and working with people with those conditions rather than specific individual conditions. So to truly use it, you have to acknowledge that often who you're dealing with, even if they've had the training, they're often not an expert in your condition. And you still have to come prepared to say openly what you need support with. Know if you need to request support on something like an airline ahead of time, what that support looks like, how you request it, how far in advance they need it to respect your request. And that is a flaw within the system itself, but despite that, I do greatly value it as a system. Where I feel there's room for improvement is it needs to be a more seamless and widely available system. And it needs more awareness, especially. I've noticed within Canada, which is a relatively new adopter of it, there's still plenty of places, even in places where they accept it as a system, that they only have some familiarity with it, or they only have some level of familiarity with what to do. And I've also found that from people in places like Australia and New Zealand who are also new to this too, that the awareness really isn't there yet, like the general public awareness. And that's why I really wanted to come on today and look at this system from a realistic point of view and speak really honest about my own experiences. And the one takeaway I hope that you get out of this video is to be a more active participant in your own experiences as a Sunflower Lanyard user. That you need to somewhat come prepared and know what you need and be generally accepting of the fact that no one's going to immediately know what you need. And ultimately, the greatest value you can get out of this program is being able to use it as a widely used tool. So that's the biggest advantage. And it legitimizes what you already live with and what you need support with. And go into it really just being able to have your own language and your own familiarity with what you need. My advice, if you ever find yourself in airports where the Sunflower Lanyard program is not recognized, which many of you will, is to, if anything, be even more proactive about speaking up about what you need and booking in advance what you need. And honestly, even if your condition isn't recognized, and even if you do have an invisible hidden condition, sometimes you can get some real surprises in terms of some genuinely kind people who are working in assistance and are there because they genuinely want to help people and support people along their own journeys. And I don't want you to feel scared off as a Sunflower Lanyard user from the airports that don't yet recognize it. In fact, I want you to see it as an opportunity to even further articulate your own support needs as upfrontly as you can. I mean, you can have so many surprises. I know that often when I travel within Casablanca Airport, something that makes a huge difference is, even though the assistance is there to support my husband, who is using the assistance as a person who navigates his everyday life and experiences while happening to have a cane, I really appreciate that in those scenarios, because of my coordination issues, often my balance is not so great. And I think in a way they kind of pick up on that, and a lot of the people working in assistance. And I do appreciate those small acts of taking my arm or making sure that I'm not falling over. I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, we don't really always have to disclose. I think that, like, even though unfortunately a lot of people who work in airports are often underpaid and pushed to do way too much, it is those small acts of kindness and small attempts to make sure that everybody is treated equally and everybody is okay that make a big, big difference. Before you go, I just wanted to correct one quick error in the video. And I said that 80% of the global population has a non-visible condition. And, oops, what I meant to say was 80% of the disabled population worldwide has a non-visible condition. I also wanted to add some clarifying points about where I got my lanyard, and specifically that was featured in the video. I got that through the Canadian Sunflower Lanyard store. And if you live in a country that is participating in the lanyard program or you are a resident of that country, you can get it online, or you can get it through a participating airport or business in any of the participating countries worldwide. That to find that though, you can go to the link in my description, which has a link to the official Sunflower Lanyard website. And those are really your options, really, if this isn't something you have considered before. I hope you enjoyed this video, and give it a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it and found it helpful. Happy reading, happy writing, my friends. See ya next time.